Hey guys, it's me, XOXO Michael, and before we get off, I would like for you guys, my nubbays, to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit that little bell. Not sure what it does personally, but hey, it might do something. And today, we're gonna do another story time. But before we get into that, I hope you liked the last video, my party video, which was also a story time. And give it 3 more years, you're gonna have 3 more of them to look at and see how I progress party-wise. But today, it's gonna be another kind of sad story time like my coming out story, but both of those go to a bigger topic, which I will talk about in a video soon. So, I'm gonna start with, I was born August 22nd to a wonderful mother, not so wonderful but father, and so as I was there, my mom had a C-section, so she was put to sleep, and my mom actually didn't hold me for a few hours until she came through, came back, and so it took my grandfather, who had always been really good, we've always been really close, and when he passed away, it was super hard on me, and he was the one to realize that when I came out, they said 5 fingers and 10 toes, which honestly is thinking back at it, how did you not notice in sonograms? Was my hand really in a fist the whole time? Come on, what are you thinking here? And my grandpa, being the first kid in our family, first grandchild, first everything, to have a missing appendage, was shocked, as everyone was most of the time when I first meet someone. And so my grandpa handed me to my mom when she came through, and she's like, "What's wrong with my baby?" Because she could tell he had been crying, and he goes, "Nothing. He has 10 toes and 5 fingers, and he's beautiful." Which, hearing him say it, hearing him tell me that in person meant a lot, and I admired him. I still do. And so growing up, my brother had never really made comments about it because, he knew what would happen, honestly, because this is pure bone. So here's my wrist, and everything from here forward is this, just crunched into a ball altogether. So it's basically pure bone. So it hurts when you get hit with it. And my brother used to pick on me when I was little, like every older brother does. And I hit him. I was like, pop. And it kind of just became don't mess with me, I already have a weapon type of thing. So growing up, I could do just about everything that everyone else could do. Monkey bars, I still haven't been able to face that and surpass it. So let's just start with elementary school. Most kids are able to tie their shoes when they go. I started elementary school here in Canton at Lincoln Elementary School. My teacher was Miss Stevens, and I was wearing these really cool new shoes that I had just got that were lace up, light up shoes. And I was hoping that they wouldn't come untied because I couldn't tie my shoes. My biggest fear came true. They came untied, and I was terrified. I was like, what are kids gonna say? What are people gonna say when I can't tie my shoe because of the fact that I have one hand? And I never really thought about, kids back then when I was in elementary school were way better with it, in my personal opinion. I made one of my best friends through that because she tied my shoes. And I will forever be grateful for her tying my shoes. If I make jokes I don't know where I'd be without you. Well, actually I do, but I would just have my shoes untied. Which, being 18, almost 19 now. I can obviously tie my own shoes, but like when I see her, it just kind of brings back nostalgia of kindergarten, me not knowing how to tie my shoes and thinking I can't because of this disability that I am challenged with every day, to now being able to. And it meant a lot the day I first like tied them. It meant a lot to me because I was like, wow, I did it. Like, I did that. Like, go me, I did it. Well, and then like all the kids were super good. I remember in fourth grade, at my school, the fourth graders ate lunch with the kindergartners, and there was a kid who had special needs, and I was assigned him to eat with him. And I will never forget this moment. It's scarred in my heart for the rest of my life. That he goes, "Don't eat with me. You're a monster." And I kind of brushed it off like, I'm a human. So I sat next to him and continued eating my lunch. And he screams, "I don't want to sit by a monster." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You only have one hand, you're a monster." And I said, "No, I'm not. I'm a human. Like, nothing's wrong with me. I was just born without two hands. That's the only difference between me and you. I just don't have 5 fingers." And he just didn't quite comprehend it. And still to this day, it breaks my heart thinking about it. Like, that could have been a teaching moment. Instead of just walking away, going to the bathroom and crying at the age of 10 in the bathroom. Like, no kid should go through that. But it's a society we grew up in. Because if you're different, it's wrong, or it's judged or criticized. Well, middle school, it was the only big issue I ever had, really. Like, I had kids make fun of me every now and then from my class, but, like, they wouldn't do it as horrific as some. Middle school was the worst years of my life because of this ability that I have and others do not. I remember my first months going to middle school. I rode the bus with my brother, and I didn't like to sit by my brother like, "Leroy, I need some space, like, thanks, but no, like, leave me alone, please." So he does. He leaves me alone. He lets me sit by myself, like I'm asking for, obviously. Like, I want to sit by myself, Lee. Like, leave me alone. And there were these 2 8th graders that kept making comments like, "Wow, one hand, freak, monster." And at that point, I just didn't say anything. I went through my day, rode the bus, hearing it, and got home and cried in my room. Cried myself to sleep just about every day because of it. And then my mom had realized, my brother had heard it, and that's when he told my mom. And she's like, "We're going to the school, and we're doing something about it." That's when I met one of the greatest men that I've ever met in an education facility, named Mr. Godina. He actually would ride with me on the bus, so he knew they wouldn't pick on me for my hand. And that just meant a lot to me, knowing that he would do that one-on-one because I was being picked on. And so starting 6th grade year, the kids went to high school, and it was a fresh start. I didn't really get picked on that much. It was the year, 5th grade was also the year you try out instruments for band, and obviously I can't play very many of them at this moment. If I maneuver it the right way, if I figure out some way, I could, but at this point I cannot. And I, knowing that, still wanted to do band. And I had basically 2 choices of what I could play. And that was French horn or trumpet. and I'd known Abby was gonna play the trumpet, so I tried both out. Honestly, I had 3 options: French horn, trumpet, and baritone. And I never liked the idea of playing the baritone because I'd have to learn backwards, and it just didn't sound fun to me. And it was heavy, so I was like, no, I want to play trumpet with my best friend. So I signed up to play trumpet. The teacher is phenomenal. Mr. Evis was phenomenal with it. Like, he would take extra time out just to help me mirror it, because you play with your right hand and I obviously can't. So he would mirror it for me, and I could not thank him enough. And till this day, I still regret not trying hard enough, or trying in general, for that man, because he deserved way more effort than what I gave. And he helped me prove people I can do it. And that just because I'm missing 5 fingers doesn't mean I can't do what you can do. And that's when 7th grade started, 6th grade started, and I could not ride a bike. I couldn't get the balance right. I'd always fallen over, and at that point I said, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not hurting myself more just so I can fit in. That's when the kids would make fun of me because I don't ride a bike, because we had an icebreaker question about riding bikes, what kind of bike you rode, and if you could do tricks. And I obviously said, I don't ride a bike. I don't have a bike either because I can't ride one. And kids made fun of me for it because you're in 7th or 6th grade, you can't ride a bike, what are you doing? And that's when I decided I was gonna go home and I was gonna force myself to learn. It took until my freshman year of high school, but I learned. I had taught myself how to ride a bike because I was sick of being bullied and minimalized and just hated and like belittled because I could not ride a bike. And in this time, I met a little boy named Dylan. He also is missing a hand, but it's his left hand. And I think it was kind of fate that we were kind of thrown in there together, because like I'm away at school now, and he's told me multiple times, like, I look up to you. You're my hero. And he's actually the person I got Nubby, because I coached him in track and basketball, and I was always his one-on-one coach. Like, he listened to me. He was very good with me. And he had just won a gold medal, and he runs up and fist bumps me and goes, Nubby Power, you're my hero. And I lost it. Emotional, because Dylan just won a gold. I'm his hero. All of this, and like going to high school, 8th grade, felt minuscule at that point. Like, Dylan was my best friend. I was able to be there for him whenever was needed, and I still will be there in a heartbeat for that kid. And then there comes 8th grade. They didn't really, at that point, they had known. Like, my mom had brought a lawyer to that school at least twice, saying if this still happens, something's gonna come of it. And I was scared. I was like, kids are gonna make fun of me because my mom brought a lawyer to the middle school. Why? They didn't, though. 8th grade, I was really picked on for being gay, or if they thought I was gay. And it happened to be a kid in my tap class, which is basically homeroom. And I still don't talk to this kid. I don't like looking at this kid at all. Like, because in Canton, instead of like an 8th grade trip, we do this thing called Outward Ingersoll, where it's 3 days, and you do a bunch of stuff as a homeroom /tap class. and one of them is going over a huge wall, and your tap class has to get you over. And I was bigger too, and I had heard them joking like they were going to drop me on purpose, and that was terrifying to me, just terrifying. And then I didn't get over the wall, and they had like held my nub so tight up here it was like turning purple, and like my arms were all scratched up, and I just got down and just had a mental breakdown, feeling like if I had two hands I could have done it. Maybe I could have tried harder, maybe. And thanks to Miss Reith, that she kind of helped pull me out of it. Like, you did great, Michael. You got up very high, and you did it with one hand. They all did it with two. And I got my nub over the ledge, and then one of them knocked it, and it fell down. And it just, what can you do? I cried. I was emotional. It was rough. And through this time period, I was actually a Special Olympics player, playing on the same team as Dylan. And we had kids make fun of us for having one hand. And keep in mind, Special Olympics is a team with kids with special needs. So you would think those kids would quite understand what we go through. And I remember the team. It was Morton, this junior team. I remember the kid's number. I remember his face. I remember it all. And I remember him just kept making comments about it, calling me a freak, righty, five finger, all of this. And I had lost it. I said, you are not gonna say that to me. And I was crying. I was freaking out. So I just walked off. And then they did. It was luckily halftime. And my coach's wife came out there and she's like, why are you freaking out? Like, what had happened? And I said, he's been talking about me and Dylan Swellen this whole game. This whole game with Stevenson because of our hand. So she told her husband, who was our head coach, who talked to their coach. And they didn't play either of their two athletes for the rest of the game because of it. But in the same process, one of the player's sisters, Zoe, is a phenomenal person. Always has been. Always been like a sister to everyone on that team. Will stand up for anyone, especially kids with special needs. And she had saw me crying into my mom's arms. And she's like, what is wrong? I'm like, that kid's making fun of me. And Zoe looks at him and goes, which one? And I said, the number. And she said, okay, that is not good. That is not okay. And walks over to their coach. And I remember it. And, like, I could never thank Zoe enough for it. Like, just the sheer disgust she had on her face for a kid with a special need to make fun of another kid with a special need was just astounding. Like, that is wrong. Like, why be mean to kids that are like you when you can just build each other up instead of tearing people down? Like, it doesn't make sense to me. Well, then I start high school. It's basically a fresh start, or so I think. I had to explain it all to teachers again, which was the rough part. Having to keep explaining it and explaining it and explaining it and explaining it to just about everyone. And I had this teacher named Miss Eskridge who had realized I take a little more time to do some two-handed tasks, but I will do them. And I will conquer it. I will move that mountain. And I will do it. You just need to give me more time. And I always did. I always got through it. And every time I had an issue with a kid making fun of me because of a physical disability, I would just talk to her. And, like, she'd make sure something was done. Like, football players were the meanest people. Not even the meanest. They were just mean. And I just physically couldn't do it. So I went to Eskridge and I said, this is what's happening. They keep making looks and all of that. Like, the looks kill you. and something was done. And like, I thank Eskridge every day because she is the reason I'm still here. And I can't thank her enough for that. For standing up for me and helping me when I needed it means so much. My sophomore year actually was my worst year of high school. My grandpa had passed away. My whole life, my grandpa was always there. He was my hero. He was one of my biggest heroes. And we were close. Like, my grandpa would watch me when my mom and dad worked, my real dad would work. And Finding Nemo was our show because I have a lucky fin. And he would always tell me to just keep swimming because you will make it. That lucky fin isn't a disability. That is a lucky fin. The first word in that is lucky, Michael. The first word is lucky, and you're lucky. You get to change the world with this. But you have to keep swimming and don't let them stop you. Because once you stop, you're done. Once you stop swimming, guys, you're done for it. And that's, like, I constantly heard it in my head, just keep swimming, just keep swimming. And that summer, we had actually started band, and we got a new teacher. I had never really had a teacher make fun of me or belittle me as much as this teacher did. I was gonna make this a whole nother video, but it's basically part of the story of being bullied and belittled, and this teacher was the absolute worst person I had ever met. The first day I met him, my instrument was still being serviced, so I didn't have it. And he was like, dang, I kind of wanted to see you play because I play it differently. And I was very upset when the previous band teacher left because she never asked. She never questioned me. She never doubted me. And he did the first day he met me. He pulled me into his office and looks at me and goes, how do you feel about moving to sideline? Because I would be very upset if a judge marked us off because of the way you play. And I said, well, can I talk to my mom? And I did. And I was like, Mom, what do you think he's meaning by marking us off because I play different? She goes, he wants you to move because you play different, Mike. Because you hold your instrument differently, because you have to. And I told him, I'm not going to move instruments because I have one hand. They won't dock us points. And then he called me into his office the end of practice that day, and he goes, well, if we miss points because they mark us, if we lose points because your glove or something's falling off, I will talk in Europe, but it is your fault. Explain how belittling a student and a physical disability is my fault. I'm waiting. It's not like I chose to be dealt this card in life, because why would anyone choose to be bullied their whole life? Why would anyone choose that? And I had always just been like, I still can't look at this teacher without wanting to hit him. He was just always so rude. And like, after I told him I wasn't moving because I did not care about his score, he called me selfish because I felt in my heart it was a jab at me because I had a physical disability and I didn't. And he goes, you're selfish, you don't care about anyone other than you. I'm like, actually I do. That's why I'm staying here, to prove a point to every kid that follows me that just because you have something different with you doesn't mean you can't do it. You can do everything every normal kid can do. And that's the message I want to preach. You can do anything that anyone can do. Everyone can do everything. It takes extra time to figure it out, but you can do it. And at that point, I had been, me, Lainey, Abby, and Riley, 3 of my very close friends still. Like, we're in band together, we all play the same instrument, and like, I make jokes and comments like, that's hand-sis, and stuff like that, because in my mind, it's easier to find comic relief with this than to be depressed because I was dealt this shitty hand in life. So we would make jokes and like puns about it, like and then so honestly I'm kind of the blame, but like then people I've never talked to, people who made fun of me in middle school, started making jokes thinking it's okay. I'm like, that's not fine, like at all. Like I understand that's kind of hypocritical, but I've never talked to you a day in my life. You don't make a joke about my disability. Well, Riley's doing it. Well, Riley's my friend, and Riley helps build me up after you've crushed me. You don't understand at all what this means. And you don't understand why I make jokes about it. I make a joke about it, then I'd rather make a joke than make a slice in my skin, honestly. Which is what I've had to deal with. I've had to teach myself, Michael, make a joke. Don't contemplate something that's gonna ruin you and everyone that loves you. And through the year, during marching band, we were not doing anything, and I was like, I'm gonna make 2 hands. I'm gonna make myself a hand. Well, so I put 5 clothespins on my nub, so I had 2 hands. And keep in mind, we weren't doing anything. And my teacher yells at me and tells me, get out. And so I walk out, and then he follows me. He goes, leave. If you want to quit, quit. I'm like, I'm not going to quit just so you get what you want, Speeden. That's not how it goes. If I was to make you quit, no. And from that point on, me and Speeden's relationship was gone. Was by far the worst teacher I had ever had. I wasn't even going to say his name. Freak. Besides the point, if you know me, you know the situation. And the way he treated me was not okay at all. He hated me because if we go to the root of the problem, because I wouldn't switch instruments. On a positive note, I just got a new match on Tinder. Besides the point, back to the story. And that just really dug at me. And then my junior year, I had met Jamie Trotter. Here we are talking about Jamie again. And she asked a question one day, actually. She was like, well, how do you do it? And I was like, just like you, but different. Just like you, but Michael's way. So I was washing dishes one day in her foods class, and she watched me wash them, because obviously I do it differently. And she goes, oh my God, Michael D., you're a pro. I'm like, I've had 18 years of practice. At that point, it was 16. I had a teacher, my driver's ed teacher, who goes, I'm not saying this out of my heart. I'm saying this by what the state could say. They might not let you take your test because of this. He was like, I'm just preparing you that they might tell you that. Thankfully, it never came up because I had the worst dream of my life, that because of this, my hand slipped off the wheel and caused a huge wreck. So, like, still to this day, I am terrified to drive because of this. Like, this is, like, it is like a propeller and a weight at the same time. Like, sometimes it will push me forward to do things, but then it's like a weight at the same time. And I remember my junior year American history. It was with Mr. Rose. I love the man to death. He's just like a teacher I want to be a teacher just like him. He is a phenomenal teacher. He wakes up every day wanting to teach. He stays up all night wanting to teach. And I want to be like that. And he pulled me aside one day and goes, you know, you're my idol. You are crushing it at this, Michael. And he also had my brother at the same time. And me and my brother are complete opposites. And he made a comment. He's like, you are nothing like your brother. And he goes, yeah, I know, I'm quiet. Jokingly. And Mr. Rose goes, yeah, but I like the fact that Michael stands up for what he believes in and what he finds is right, which I always have. Like, you're not going to pick on a kid because what's wrong with him. yeah, the kid probably smells. Yeah, we've all made a comment that a kid smells. Maybe you should shower more. Yeah, like we had those kids in my elementary school. I had a kid in my tap class. And yeah, I would like faces. And I have apologized to that kid multiple times, actually. And um, actually texted him the other day just to apologize again for the way I acted towards him in tap. But it was like I was his only friend in that class. It felt like he only wanted to be my partner because no one else would talk to him. Like, people would make comments about him smelling and everything. I'm like, yeah, he smells, but like, don't bring that much light to it. Like, leave it alone. You don't know what's going on at home. Like, you don't know if he's getting proper water to shower. Like, yeah, I'd make a comment too, but then I'd immediately feel bad. Like, I was a hypocrite back then. Honestly, I will tell you flat out. Yeah, I picked on a kid. He smelled. I felt bad about it. I apologized. Then my junior year also, there was a kid. And honestly, I feel so bad for the way I treated him because he made a comment and it just rubbed me the wrong way. And then it kind of felt like I felt he didn't have anyone. So obviously, me going through what I've gone through, I felt he needed a friend. So I went with him. And then he made a comment. And it just really brushed me the wrong way. And to this point, I feel horrible for saying it. But I looked at him and said, don't blame me because you suck. And I just felt horrible for saying it, to be honest. Like, the kid scares me to death. Honestly, he terrifies me. But I shouldn't have said it to him, I feel. Like, yeah, someone was going to say it, and it probably would have been me anyways because I am so blunt and open with what I feel. And honestly, it's not the best quality at all. It's pretty bad to have that quality, in my opinion. So I felt horrible for saying it, but the past is the past. Like, so I went my senior year. What did I even do senior year? I don't think really anything came up my senior year. My sophomore year. My junior year, I mean. Parker, which I'll have a video about Parker later, won prom king. And, like, people would make comments, like, and call him a retard. And why didn't the one-handed kid win prom prince then? And, like, the faggot and all of that. It just, like, why bring in my disability? I am Michael, with or without this. Like, this hasn't changed me at all. Maybe, honestly, like, maybe if I was born with two hands, I would be completely different, but that's a what if. This is a now, and this is obviously stuck here. So, and, like, senior year, that was my point. I wanted to prove that anyone with any difference can do what they want. And winning most opinionative kind of feels like, I'll tell you what I think. And that kind of goes in, like, if you're talking about someone, I'm going to tell you that that's wrong. And, well, you do this too. So, like, I remember in my history class, we were talking about Parker winning prom king, actually, because we were talking about the sit-ins and civil rights movements, because that was a movement we made to have a kid with a SNEED prom king instead of the traditional prom king. And a kid made a comment about it, and I lost it. He goes, well, you have one hand, so are you upset because you didn't win? And I said, that has nothing to do with it. I don't care. I would have loved to win. Who wouldn't have loved to win anything something in high school? And so I was just, like, astounded by the fact he said it. I was like, no, I'm mad that you're making a comment about him. Like, that's not okay at all. And then you make a comment about my one hand claiming you're my friend. No, that's not okay at all. Like, that's not okay. And then, like, it was just kind of my senior year. instead of nobody, it was nubby. Um, nubby loves you. Because it's like a play on words from Perks of Being a Wallflower. There's a character who calls himself Nothing. His name's, you can call me Patrick or Nothing, and the teacher calls him Nothing. And then I felt Nubby was kind of my step, like, this is what I'm gonna use to boost people up. Like, this might have weighed me down for 5-10 years. Actually, I'd say 15, 16. Might have pushed me to the ground, but I'm still gonna use it as a step for other people. Like, I've seen what this world can do, and I'm not gonna let that happen to someone I care about. Like, I have been through the thoughts and all of that. That's why I do what I do. That's why I, let's talk about college first, and then I'll explain what I'm going where. At school, obviously I didn't have to do anything different than do what I already do. The teachers would ask, and like I'd explain, but like I didn't go into much detail because you wouldn't get to know me that well. But I had a job where I worked with food, so obviously I had to wear a glove, but it was a way I had to figure out, like rubber bands, hair ties, plastic wrap, tape. I'm pretty sure we tried rope at one point to see what worked best. And like they never had someone work there with one hand, so like that was kind of like a win in my book personally. Like, now I get to teach you. I've been thrown and battered this whole life because of this. Now I get to teach people. And my senior year, see, I'm going back and forth now, I'm sorry guys. Dylan looked at me and said, "Are you going to college?" And I said, "Yeah, for sure. He's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" "I want to teach kids with special needs." He goes, "Oh," and then he asked, "Are you staying here for college or are you going away? Please don't go away." And at that point, I hadn't decided where I was going to go with my life. If I was going to stay in Canton, Illinois, thankfully I didn't, or leave. And when I told him, he just cried. He's like, "My nubby buddy's leaving." And I said, "No, Dylan, I'm not leaving. I will be here." And like, when that hit, there was right around the time to pick senior quotes. In the midst of like senior year, you have to do like senior quote, most likelies, and all of that. And I really wanted to do a funny senior quote because like I'm always like the, I guess, depressed one type of thing, like, or the inspirational type of quotes. And I wanted to do my senior quote of, "I'm always right, just not handed." Because if you think about it, obviously I have to be left-handed. My principal didn't like it because it was making fun of a disability. It's my disability. If it shows in the yearbook that maybe he makes fun of himself to help himself, because that's, in all reality, what it kind of does for me. I have to make fun of myself, so when people do it, it kind of just bounces off. Like, yeah, it might cut a little bit. It's not like a gash. It's just a scrape instead of a whole-on wound. And he hated it. He said, "No, that's not okay. That's so wrong." And I said, "Why is it wrong?" "It's my disability." He goes, "No, it's not happening." So I say, "Okay, well then here's my senior quote." And my senior quote had something to do with my grandpa. And it was, he had a lucky fin, so they said he couldn't, but he just kept swimming, and he did. Because my whole life I've always had to prove people wrong that, "Oh, well, you can't do that. You can't do that." Like, my grandma thought I couldn't peel an egg, but I just had to prove her, "Yes, Grandma, I can do everything you can do. Just takes me either a minute to figure it out or making it longer to do it." So, like at work, it takes me a minute to do it, to figure it out, or a minute longer. But I can do it. And it was just one of those things that cut at me, like, I can do everything, and that's why I love my senior quote so much. Because, honestly, anyone can look at it and just, like, you can do it. If he has one hand and he can do this, you can do it with two. If just, like, don't count yourself out until it's over. Like, if I would have said, Michael, you're not going to account to anything in life because you are missing 5 fingers, I wouldn't have left my bed ever. If I would have just, you can't do it because they say you can't, I wouldn't have gone anywhere in life. And that's why, I stand up and boost people up with, I'll slide up on Snapchat stories like, you are so beautiful. Like one of my close friends, Tatum, gorgeous. And every time she posts on her story, you are beyond beautiful. One of my friends, Caitlin, every time she posts on her story, you are beautiful. Queen Amelia, she's literally a queen. Like, you are beyond beautiful, and oh my god, I love you. Like, all of them. Like, when my best friend Lainey posts on Instagram, you are so hot, like, boosting them up. Because when you help others, you're helping yourself. And that's honestly what you have to take away from it. That just because someone has a disability or an ability that you don't obtain it's a gift and it's a blessing and a curse. Because I don't obtain 2 hands, but I obtain 1, and I can do just about everything. Yeah, I don't know how to play the piano. Yeah, I don't drive stick shift, but it takes time for me to learn it. I can learn it if I want. And don't get me wrong, one day I will play the piano. One day I will drive a stick shift. One day I would do everything people with 2 hands do. Brain surgeon? Probably not. Because, you have to force yourself to do everything. Like, if you live in your comfort zone, you're basically just burying yourself in a grave. You have to force yourself to do things you're not comfortable with, because that's what makes you you and what makes you awesome, is by doing what you're not comfortable with. And that's the thing I want you to take from this video. Do what you're not comfortable with, because that's what's gonna push you further. And don't judge before you know, because once you get to know that person, it's a whole different story. Like, on the outside I have 1 hand, but in my opinion I'm pretty funny. Honestly, you can tell me differently and my friends can tell me differently, but I feel like I can be a blast. But you wouldn't get to know that unless you peer inside, instead of just looking at this thinking, wow, what? I have a little funny part for this. So I'm gonna tell you some of the jokes I've made growing up, about when people ask what happened to my hand, so it's a little more lighthearted at the end. One of my favorite was a shark bit it off in Vietnam, or just a shark bit it off in general, but the Vietnam's more funny. My cousins used to make jokes that, Jake, you're in trouble. Why? 'Cause you ate all of Mikey's fingers. A lawnmower cut it off at one point in a joke. A ceiling fan. I ate it off at one point because I was so hungry. My teacher made that one up. Didn't like that teacher either, but I'm not going back to explain about him. A forklift took it off. That was one of the more... One was a serial killer just cut my hand off because I defeated him with the rest, and I only let him take my hand. And I just love making up the stories, because with that story I get to show that it's okay for me to make this joke that, oh wow, this isn't just sinking him, it's actually kind of like a hot air balloon lifting him up. And so I want you guys that watch this to make, what story should I use next? I've used sharks, I've used, a pirate cut it off, all of that. And look at it this way. There is going to be someone that looks like you guys. You will always have a famous person, maybe they're up and coming, to look like you. Mine might be Captain Hook, but it's fine. And you just have to be that person. If you don't see anyone that looks like you and resembles you in the public eye, be that person for the kids that look like you and resemble you. And for today's quote of the day, it's, should I go funny or serious? I'll do both. The quote of the day, the funny one is, I'm always right, guys, just not handed. And the serious one's gonna be, love yourself even when no one's watching. And love yourself more when everyone's watching. Because that's what's gonna show them, wow, they actually love themselves more when we're watching. Like, pff. And on a final note, I love you guys. You're my nub babes. Like, comment, and subscribe. And overall, stay beautiful, stay awesome, and change the world with you. Don't let the world change your smile. Change the world with yours. I love you all. XOXO, Michael.